Everyone. This is Dr. Yam, your Keep It Simple coach inside of Content Tips and More Facebook group, as well as my Facebook page and YouTube channel. So good afternoon, everyone. Let's get started with our another session of live coaching. So how's everyone doing today? I hope everyone is doing well. We are going to be continuing on our series of the basics with particular focus on content creation. And tonight, or today, I should say, we're going to also be thinking about style and how do we do it with style. So for those of you who haven't met me already, I'm Dr. Yam, your Keep It Simple coach and the host of Content Creation Tips and More. We are a community of solopreneurs, freelancers, and coach small biz owners, as I like to call them. And it's our unique space where we can increase your productivity, profits, and passion by applying some proven tips, tools, and strategies that are doable. So if you haven't already done so and you haven't joined our community, I certainly want to invite you to do so. And you can find us there, as well as for those of you, if you haven't launched your business just with that being said, we are going to start off with a question. And today's question is, what is a style guide and why do you need one? And remember, we're also focusing on those content creations and tips with regard to content creation or marketing strategies. And we're just continuing the conversation, another knowledge nugget that you're going to be able to apply to your biz journals. As yes, you know, I'm never going to go without saying it. Make sure you got your biz journals out. Oops, upside down, but it's still here. So make sure that you pull that out as we continue on with our conversation. And that's the question of the day. What is a style guide and why do you need it? Now, in prior conversations or prior coaching sessions, you've heard me talk about what is content marketing, what is content creation, and what are some processes and strategies that you need. And even with that being said, when we talk about creating, it's always the fun stuff that people want to do first, but they don't want to do the detail-y stuff that you need to do so that you can be a bit more successful and be consistent, which is really what style guides are all about. So let's go first with answering the first part of the question. What is a style guide and why do you need one? And then I'm going to give you also some focuses or the elements of a good style guide, or sometimes you may also hear the term brand board. And there's not too much difference between two. It's kind of a naming convention, nomenclature that, depending on what industry that you're in, may differ. So you may find or hear different ones with respect to that. So the reason why, what is a brand guide is simply, it is kind of like your rule book, I like to call it. It's that explains basically how your business wants to present itself to the world. And it's going to be by way of your logo. It's going to be by way of the font or your typography that I like to call it. It's a formal name. The color selections, your color choices, the photography, the imagery that you're going to put out in the world, and also all of those put together what we call your brand voice. So a style guide is just that. It is kind of like the rule book, the playbook that allows everyone to be a reference to, that's going to help you to provide that level of consistency that you want when it comes to how your brand looks, how it feels, how it sounds. And it's also a great way, kind of like some might even call it a brand Bible. But don't let the name give you any levels of intimidation. It's simply a way for your go-to whenever you're looking to create content and however it's going to show up for you. So that's the down and dirty reasons. Is what is a brand guide? It's basically your business style of how you want to show up for your business in the way in which you're going to be able to create content. Now, the other piece to that is, well, Why do you need one? And there's reasons why it's important to have one, particularly for two. Mine's are two reasons in primary. The reason why you want to have a brand board is you want to be able to have a sense of consistency, particularly when we get so caught up in being creative every time. If you're not sending out a clear, consistent message to your target audience, and we all know what a target audience is. If you don't, please, you can find our free ebook inside of the Facebook group. You want to be able to be consistent in how you're showing up, in that if you're not going to be recognizable. And you want to be recognizable. You want to be able to say, when people see a color or a shape or the name, they was like, oh, it's them, it's her, it's him. That's being recognizable. If you're sending out mixed messages, kind of like dating, right? So when you're dating, if you're not being consistent in how you're showing up and what's important to you, how you feel, what you're not going to take, if you're not consistent and you're like all over the board and kind of looking like you're polar, then people are going to be like, something's wrong with this person. And so the same thing could hold true for your business. You want to have a sense of consistency. And that's what a style guide will help you to do. And also know this, a great thing about a style guide is you can do this not only just for your brand as a whole, but you can also, what I tend to do, and I'll show you in a little bit for those of you who are watching in the live session, you can do this for your different products as well. If you tend to have more than one and you want to have a theme or a style, particularly in fashion and others, then of course it takes on a whole nother meaning when it comes to, or even mood boards, or you may hear that term. But for today, we're really going to stick to the topic of a branding perspective. Why is this important when it comes to creating your content? Is you want your content to send a clear message to your intended audience so that they can say, oh, that's them. And that's how I know I can recognize them from far away. So when I see that, it's a trigger, right? It's all about triggering people, remembering who you are visually. And then they're more apt to stop in the scroll and be able to say, oh, let's see what they're doing today. Let's see what they wrote today. Let's see what social posts they have today, right? And that's what you want to be able to start creating these habits with your intended audience. Now, here are some benefits or reasons why, again, consistency. The other one is going to be, you want to have some standardization. So, and this also means that you shouldn't have using colors or fonts that aren't part of your brand. Unless you're doing it for some like holiday or whatever, every now and then you might step out, but setting the standards and the rules that you have is going to help how everything else shows up for itself. So again, your logo versus the spacing around your logo or the placement in regards to your logo. So those are standardized. And you want to be able to, and like I said, being recognizable. It also helps you to stay focused when you're creating that content. Some of us tend to be overly creative. We get those stimulation juices and we're just drawing and we're putting stuff together. And then you have to step back and was like, is this me? Is this my brand? Right? So you want to be able to help you to stay focused and consistent in how you're producing. Plus, when you're focused, you're not wasting time. And that's always a good thing. And then, of course, there's value. When there's consistency, it allows for you to show up more professionally. And that it also means that you're reliable. And that can that has some impact on you as a person and how you're showing up for your customers. Hope that makes some sense. Now, so that's kind of the why behind having a style guide. Now, the point is, well, what are some components of a style guide and what does a good style guide, is made up of? And I'm going to both demonstrate and show you, as also I'll break down the pieces and parts. So let's kind of go through just some key elements of what's included in a style guide. Well, the first thing you're going to have is a color palette. And let me do this. Let me bring up a style guide for you. So let me share my screen. And let's see, which one am I bringing up here? Okay. Let me share my screen. I'm going to show over here to my tab. And let's see. Okay. So you should be able to see this. And for those of you who are audio, you'll have to watch the video, but I'll be as descriptive as I possibly can. So with a brand guide, a style guide or a brand guide, there are certain components you want to have. You want to name it, which is typically the name of your brand itself. You're going to have a space for your color palette. You're going to have a space for what we call your brand vision. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Your logo, and also the placement of logos. There's usually two different types. You always want to have a backup. There's different ways in which your logo can show up because of where it shows up and placement of that. You have your typography, or what we call your fonts. And then there's going to be also a space for possibly different style fonts, as well as also keywords. This is also focusing on those being consistent in how your brand and your voice comes up, and also it helps with some of your staffing with respect to that. I also have a place in there for logo details, meaning that, again, use certain placements of the logo, a dark background versus a light background, things along those lines. Another piece, part of that branding guide is going to be inspirational photos. This again gives you that voice and that consistency. What types of imagery or inspires you with respect to that brand? You'll have that on your brand board or style guide. And then another thing has to do with is either patterns, if you're going to have patterns, or graphics that are going to kind of show up, or what we call submarks, where there may be a particular portion of your graphic that is a icon, possibly. That's what we would call a submark, meaning that it could kind of stand out on its own and have a presence about it so that people can still recognize you. Can also serve as your favicon. When you're having a website, up in the URL in the browser panel, you're going to see that little image. That's a favicon. So out of that graphic of your logo, you want to pull out what we call a favicon or a submark. What is that element? So you'll see that as well. And then if there are patterns that you're using that may also be emblematic of your brand, put those there as well. Now, that's just like, again, the pieces and parts. Doesn't sound like a lot, but let's break that down a bit. When we think about your brand guide, let's talk about your color palette. Now, I'm not a colorist. And so whatever colors that you feel are going to be representative of the product or the service or the brand of your business, that's on you. There are some best practices. There is some methods of how you should, pick colors, complementary colors or color tones. There's different ways to play off of color. Inside of the community, inside of our videos, I go over some tools that will help you in picking out your colors for your branding if you haven't done so already. So please take a look at that inside of the community media section as well. And so there you're going to identify each one of the colors in your brand that are going to be a part of your board. And this typically will be represented. You can have them in different shapes. I tend to use circles. You can have them in squares, whatever makes you happy. The thing is just to have your color palette represented on the branding board itself. Each one of the different colors. So in this particular example, for Planners for Profit, which is one of our upcoming membership sites that you'll hear more about a little later, the colors are green. But there's shades of green. So there's my primary green, and then below it is the actual hashtag, that 6-digit number with the hash mark, and then it's followed by 6 numbers or letter combinations. And so I have each one of the colors that is represented in my logo or in my branding in and of itself. Now, you'll notice I have 3 colors of green in this particular example. And then although it may be an assumption that black and white are part of it, it may not. I use a black and white specifically within my brand in this particular case. So I identify the black and the white, and I also have what I call an accent color, which is a gold. And it shows up in certain places because of the type of components within this particular membership site. And so gold is one of my accent colors. So those are series. So I have 3 colors of green, my black, my white, and my gold. That is the color palette. So you want to make sure you identify your colors. And the reason why too is as you are creating other content, you want to make sure that it's consistent as well inside of different applications that you may be using, as well as if you ever need to hand off this work to other people, graphic designers, or you're sending something out to the printers, offset printers and the like, you want to make sure that that color is as consistent as it possibly can be. And so the hex codes are the ability that we kind of like the language of color. Hex codes are CMYKs, another way, depending again on where you are sending it and using it out. For the most part, in this particular case, when we talk about content marketing, it's typically stuff that's going to end up on side of a website or even on printed materials. Next section is, I'm going to go in order. So the next section are your fonts. This is, again, the text styles that you will use. Again, what are they? Typically, you shouldn't have more than 3 as a rule of thumb. You may use a particular font for your bold or headers versus regular text, written text, and things along those lines. You're going to use those. Maybe a different style font. So in this particular case, I have a Mont Bold. And then I showed the letters at both uppercase and lowercase. And if there are any symbols, just so people can see visually what does that look like. So there's the Mont Bold. And then for the body text, that whenever I'm using body text, I want to use the Mont Thin. And again, I show the alpha, uppercase and lowercase. And then I even have a font for accent, because in this particular case, when you look at the logo, the 4 is in a totally different font style and it's an accent. And I want to acknowledge that because, again, for consistency purposes. So again, the accent in this case is called strings. Now, I've covered in prior sessions around fonts and how to use them or where you can get them in proper use. Again, if you haven't followed me before, inside of the Facebook group is where you'll find some of my coaching conversations with respect to fonts and my confession of being a font hoarder. Another story for another day. Now, so those are your font styles. Again, no more than 3, because if not, it's so distracting. And you want, again, consistency matters in how you show up. All right. So we want to be careful with respect to that. The next piece is having to do with I cover this just a little bit, but again, your focus words is another way, again, being consistent and showing up. And this also helps with respect to your SEO. And it's just another useful placement inside the brand for consistency when you're using, when you're writing and things along those lines, that these are words that will resonate and will help, and that you will be able to rank higher as well. So I've identified some words that, with respect to this brand, are helpful. Planner, do-it-yourself, solopreneur, coaches, planners to grow your business, as in a phrase. So those are long tail phrases, as we call them. So, right, what are those keywords, your focus keywords that are going to be a part of your brand? Another space that you'll have is your brand vision. And again, this just sets that tone and purpose around what this is for from a branding perspective. So for this particular brand of Planning for Profit, our brand vision is that we're helping new solopreneurs, coaches, and freelancers access useful DIY training to grow their business. That is our vision. Now, then there's also what everybody likes to go to first is logo. Now, having that also inside of the brand. Remember, this is a reference guide for yourself as well as for others that you may have helping you to do this work. So here, when we talk about logos, I always recommend when you're doing logos, you should have both a horizontal version of your logo as well as kind of either circular or square version. And the reason for that is not always is it that same logo going to be placed nicely, land always nicely in every situation. And so having two versions of it helps you show up best. So I put places for that. What does your logo look like in horizontal? And if you're not creating it, that you give it to your graphic designer and that they're going to create it for you. And so that you have it for due places. Because I found, and it's been my experience, that one version of a logo doesn't always work in every situation. When I'm working inside of a web page, certain spacing and things just don't let it show up as nicely. And then you're put in a situation with it just not looking good. And so to help avoid that, get into the habit of having two versions of your logo. And so in this particular example, I do just that. There's a horizontal version, also in full color. And then the other piece to this is you also want to be prepared to have your logo in all black or in all white. Again, where it's being placed, depending on the event that you're in, and they may have everything in a black background. Well, your logo may have black in it. If your logo has black in it and is sitting on top of a black background, guess what you're going to see? Absolutely nothing. So that's why it's important to have versions of it so that, again, consistency matters. So in this particular example, as you can see, I'm going to zoom this up a bit. You can see that there is a color version, which is black, white, and green. And then I have an all black version and then an all white version. And that way I control how things will end up. And then I'm ready to share that with whoever is being placed. If I'm showing up in a podcast or if I'm doing an ad space, whatever it is, you want to be able to have these ready to go. The same is going to hold true for if it's in a square or a circle or something that's doesn't take up as much space. And so again, full color. And then what does your black and white look like? Put them there. These are the references that you want to have available for other people to see. Then another space here is I put in here logo details. Again, this helps the people who are helping you as well as keeping you consistent around how colors are showing up. So in this case, I put the color codes for your black and your green on a light color. That's what you use versus the white you put on dark colors. You'd be surprised. People just think everything's going to work. If you don't tell them, they don't know. You also may want to put some detail with respect to how your fonts are placed. So the Mont bold is always going to be upper lowercase versus the slogan in this particular case, as you notice here in the logo, it's in that same accent style and it's always lowercase, right? So again, the specificity can fall into play and how you want things to be consistent. So bold, and so how you want those fonts to show up in the type of placement. Again, that's another important piece. Then here, just another, what is your URL, if there's one for it? And then if there's any mailing address, because if you're doing e-commerce of any sort, then you need to make sure that you have some type of a mailing address that's typically required when you're doing so the one, make sure that you're legit. And then again, an email address. So again, consistency and information all kind of bundled into one. I expand this brand board over to 2 pages because I also like to be able to provide other details, particularly, again, those inspirational photographs. So in this particular case, the mood of the brand, the mood of this particular brand is happy people who are working on their laptops because they're planning and also want to have like bright backgrounds whenever possible. So you'll notice the consistency of the filter in a sense, the layout, how people are engaged, they're happy, they're working on their laptops, and it's all about being active and working, right? So that's the purpose of the planning for profit. and being able to do that, even maybe even holding a credit card. That's a good one too. But this is just gives the people, not to say they'll only use these photographs. That's not what this means. This is just to give yourself and others as a part of reference that this is the mood I'm looking for. So when we are picking out photographs, you want to lean in that direction. I shouldn't be seeing guy in a suitcase with a dark background as a picture in any of my stuff. No, I want to be able to show people who are working for themselves or but are happy about the fact that they're working and making progress as well as being profitable, right? So that's the essence around that. So that's the reason why we're doing that. Now, another piece of the planning guide that you may want to also keep in mind, if you haven't given this any thought, is that there's an opportunity for you to also think about patterns. I know people don't think about it too much, but it may resonate with you. What does the background look like? Because sometimes everything is not a photograph, and you want to be able, again, control the narrative. So in this particular case, there's a space. If you want to, you don't have to. There's a place for patterns, what we call the submark, and favicons. So in this particular case, the money bag in green is my part of my logo. It is also part of what I call my submark, meaning if you didn't see the full logo, you're going to at least see the submark. And the submark is just going to be that single money bag, or it could be the bundle, depending on where it's being placed. So, but I also can create my own pattern. So that's something else you may consider. You don't have to necessarily adopt a pattern, but you can take that submark, that icon that is a part of your logo, and you can create a pattern with it. So there's something that you can ask somebody to create it for you if you don't do it yourself, but there's another opportunity for that. And as you will notice, the reason why I have those 3 gradations of green is because I use that in the group and they all signify something different in the brand product. And that's why there's 3 different colors, because I have 3 different levels. So you'll see that there. So you also may see all 3 of these kind of together in that patterning that you can have designed. So there's that. And again, from a submark perspective, meaning that this icon right here, the single green money bag with the dollar sign in it, is a submark, meaning I can put that out by itself if I couldn't have or fit my full logo, and it still would be recognizable. Also, keep in mind about favicons. A favicon is going to be the little icon that shows up when a person lands on your web page or your landing page. And there's typically a placement for that icon image to show up. Now, I will show you how you can create your own favicon because it's not hard to do. So I'll show you that in a moment. So this happens to be what those represent. And then I also have it here in a cluster because there is a component inside of our membership when we're doing bundling. And this is how the bundle icon kind of shows up. And then here I have 2 patterns that we tend to use on either the web page or on landing pages. And they are simply like planners, but they're in the background, and they are also subdued, or the transparency is low. So it's just, again, something to sit behind another logo, behind the text, or just kind of give that essence of what is this all about. So just like a bunch of little planners that are scattered, and that's a pattern that shows up on some of our webpage or other products. So if you have a pattern, it could just be as simple as stripes or polka dots, whatever you want it to be. That's another opportunity that you want to, again, be consistent in what that pattern is and how it will appear. And so those are pieces and parts that you could have on your brand board. Again, this is just a way, not the way when it comes to brand boards, but I do want to give you that opportunity. So I'm going to stop sharing that. Now, here's the next thing. I want to just do a quickie on how do you create a favicon. When you are, I'm going to give you an example by using my Canva account. So give me 1 second. So for those of you who are simply listening, I'm going to open up Canva, and I'm also going to go to a website. Give me 1 second. I'm going to put this inside of the group here, inside of my comments. So create your favicon. You're going to go to this webpage. Give me 1 second. Now, I'm going to share my screen again. And let's see here. I want to do I have my can here? Okay, hold on one second. Let me just double check, make sure I have the right one in front so we won't. Yeah, I don't have it. Let me just pull that one up real quick. Logos. Okay. Now we can share. Alrighty. Now we'll share my screen. Alrighty. So now you'll see I'm inside of my Canva account, and here's where I created the logos. And so I'm going to come down, and remember that in this particular case, my icon or my submark is the money bag that's green with a $sign in it, right? Well, what I did is you could do the same. Remember, you're creating a favicon. So a favicon should be a very simple component, not your full logo. Do you make a favicon with? You want to pull out of your logo one element that, again, helps being recognizable and consistent on a web page or on a landing page if you're doing any sales funnels. So what I did is I just took that one icon and I made it really nice and big inside of one of the pages in my logo layouts all by itself. I have one here, and I also have it in the doubles and in my bundle. Okay. So if I wanted this to be my favicon, I'm going to go back to the single one. This is what I would do. You're going to create it, and then you're going to do a download, and you're going to do it as a transparent background, that one image. And I'm going to show it here. And I'm going to save it as a PNG file and just download it and save it to your computer. Okay. And there's the planner for logo, right? I have this one. I'm just going to call this one demo just to be on the safe side. Okay. So I've now, oops, it popped up. Oh, no, it should be all right there still. Okay, we're good. So now we've saved that file. I'm going to stop. And now I'm going to take you to a web page called Create a Favicon. And it's called favicon.io. So you'll see that inside of the group. And if not, let me know, and I'll put it also inside of the Facebook group later if you don't see it as well. So you're going to go to Favicon, which is favicon.io. Okay, favicon.com. And I'm going to also, I'll make a quick banner here just to be sure everybody can see it. Show it. Okay, so again, you can go to favicon.io. Okay, there we go. Now, once you are gone there, I'm going to share my screen again. Where is my favicon? Oh, here we go. Okay. So now we're on the Favicon webpage. Really simple to do. Remember, we just saved our PNG file, right? All you have to do here is you're going to do Favicon Generator. And what you can do is you can actually create a favicon by the PNG file like we just created. You can also just do text if you wanted to, or you can do an emoji and create that as an icon, as a favicon as well. So you have your three options. So what I want to do is simply click on PNG to what they call an ICO. This is the file type for a favicon. So you're going to click on PNG to 50. I always get some pop up, get on my nerves. Okay. And then here, you're simply going to go to the converter on the page, and you're simply going to click on it. You will go and find the page that you want to use. I'm going to go back here to mine and open up my icon that I just did and select it so you can upload it. And once you've uploaded the file, you'll see that it will show up right next to the button that's called download. Once you see that, Then all you want to do is hit the download button. And then what's going to happen is your download is going to come in the form of a folder. It's going to be a zip file. And inside that zip file, you're going to get about 6 or 7 different types of files. And depending on where it's being placed is where you could use it. So there is Android Chrome, there's Apple. There's going to be one for the Favicon. It's going to come in 2 different sizes, a 16 by 16 and a 32 by 32 pixel, as well as the Favicon IO itself. And then I think that's it. So you want to go ahead, and then you also can use the tag so that if you wanted to do it for some HTML, that if you're doing some hard coding, they give you that information as well. So you'll be able to create it. So what you want to do is to simply hit the download button. It's going to download a compressed file, and it's going to be called favicon_io. And you're simply going to save it. I'm going to just put demo in this one just to keep it separate. And I'm going to hit save. And now you've downloaded the folder, and it's now going to be in a zip file. And then you can simply extract it. Then what you'll be able to do is that should you find yourself in a situation where you want to create have a Favicon identity on a particular placement, then you will be able to upload the file. They'll usually will tell you the type of file that they want you to use, which is a Favicon icon. And then you'll be able to upload it and it will show up. And that's as simple as it gets for creating a Favicon. So hopefully you found that to be helpful. That being said, that is today's section, and doing content creation with style by answering the question, why have a style guide and what is it? And hopefully today you've been able to now check this off of your list, and now you can get on with creating content with style, consistency, and be able to show up nicely wherever you want to be with your brand. So this is Dr. Yam, your Keep It Simple coach. Again, join me over at smallbizsociety.com is where you'll be able to find us over at Content Creation Tips and More with me and others, solopreneurs, freelancers, and coaches. And if you haven't already done so and you are an aspiring entrepreneur, you can also join us over at the Busy 9-to-5ers Hive as well. And don't forget, we'll be having our upcoming session where we're going to be hosting our Content Design Essentials Bootcamp, is where you're going to be able to learn the best practices for designing content that's going to experience a level of engagement with your readers and improve your goals of achieving that level of engagement with them. So at the end of our bootcamp, you're going to be able to identify your content goals, how they're going to be able to align with your reader's buyer's journey. You're going to be able to take them further down that journey so that you can have the conversions that you want. You're going to be able to implement your design strategy that's going to help to elevate your blog design, as well as all the other related components that are going to come along with it. And you're going to be able to create a quality blog post that's going to keep your readers immersed throughout and motivate them to be able to make a decision. Remember, going through that buyer's journey, and then optimize that content as well. So there'll be more details with respect to that, and you'll find that inside of the Content Creation Tips and More Facebook group, as well as on my webpage, where you can find me over at keepitsimplecoach.info is where you'll also be able to find me. And this is another session. I hope you found this to be helpful. And as I like to say, let's get busy. Take care.